I had a profound spiritual awakening. So profound that I came out of it an atheist. Don't hate me. Don't hate me. If you're willing to listen to what I have to say as the beginning of a follow-up to some podcast videos I had put out when I was discussing things while it was happening, and if you're willing to put up with my crappy camera and the crappy lighting, I work with what I've got. I will be happy to expound the story to you. Well, not really. I'm not going to tell you the story. I will be happy to explain where I stand today to you a little bit. And I hope that what I have to say will help any of you who might find yourselves also so chewed up that you wonder if there's a God. Let's begin with the experience. While it was happening, I was seeing and dealing with a lot of things. My awakening was happening. There was some cosmic events happening at the same time. And I was dealing with a lot at the same all at once. And it was a hero's journey. 0 stars, do not recommend. It was overwhelming. And the further I went, the more negative and dark things got. And the more people would not speak to me and help me. So that I was alone and isolated. Got very depressed. And I almost didn't make it out. To be quite honest, I almost didn't make it out. During this time, I supposedly was in contact with the gods. And the gods were not godding. It was horrible. Until finally, with the help of a friend who finally did listen, I was able to have what I call a Rumpelstiltskin moment. And I named what was going on out loud. And in that moment, everything vanished, and I was mostly relatively free. The awakening happened in the very beginning. I had to go through a process after that, and I'm given to understand that what I went through was a bit more difficult than it should have been, because I didn't have guides, elders to help me, any of the things that I'm now hearing shamans on YouTube and whatever say, you needed these things, but at the time that I needed them, when I was searching for them, people in the shaman forums on Reddit, and we all know on Reddit were like, how dare you, you self-entitled little pig, be upset that your father has passed away. Shame on you. There is no such thing. That is not tradition. I'm sure I would know my people's tradition better than you would, you stranger. But anyway, when it was over, and I will unpack the story bit by bit, because I want to tell you what happened, so that if you need to know what to be aware of and how to push back and how to fight back, you will have this information. But for now, I'm just going to sum up with that when it was finally over, I was chewed up and I had barely kept from being swallowed. And I came out completely stripped. They say that during a shamanic awakening that you will die many times over, but I didn't just die. I was carved into little strips and hung out to dry as beef jerky, or human jerky, man meat jerky, long pork jerky. And it was not in a poetic, transformative way like they put in the movies and talk in the stories and, oh, no stitching. I was scraped hollow. And one thing that was scraped out of me was my very belief and trust in the powers that be. Because at the beginning, I had been approached by the powers that be, and I had spent a whole life actually being a lot more devout than people thought I was. I was going to be a missionary in the Congo. I still prayed. I still did certain rituals. I still would smudge. I would still do all of these things, so that when I was approached the way I was, I believed it. And that actually just did me a big disservice. So that I had no belief in anything anymore. I didn't know what to believe or trust anymore. And I'm not somebody who goes on faith. I go on trust. If I have faith in you, it's because you've built up a level of trust to allow faith to flourish. But as I had said, there were no people. My friend actually had put some self-service in front of her friend for over a spirit. Even it was that bad because I was not. When it comes to being touched, I wasn't the only one being touched, but I was the one dealing with everything alone. So, there was just emptiness, and I realized that I didn't believe in God anymore. I mean, I knew that there were things out there. I knew that people called them gods, but I didn't believe in God anymore. I still believed in the spirit, and I still know that there's a thing connected, but definitely my world tree was turned upside down, and everything had started all over again. It was to the point that I called up a friend of mine who happens to be an atheist, and we had a nice chat about atheism and what had turned him into being an atheist from being raised Catholic and then going Protestant for a while. And when I said to him, well, I guess I'm not quite an atheist then, because I recognized that I still knew that there were spirits out there and there was a greater something out there. And he said, no, you're an atheist because you no longer believe in God anymore. And the way the establishment would teach you that the God and everything is. You no longer believe in the organization of religion anymore. It's you know that there's something out there, but it's not in that kind of way. And so I had to accept that about myself. And so then I had to go off again and think some more. Well, what do I believe in? And I had to step backwards to where I had come from, my roots. And I said to myself, well, how I grew up, spirits were always all around me. House spirits, land spirits, the feeling of a room changes when something enters or leaves. Watching the swing set on the porch jump once when a spirit got off of it really quick, and I'm hollering at my dad, Dad, there's a thing, I got on the porch, and he looked at the swing and he said, no, something just got off of it. All of this had stayed for me, and I realized that what had been burnt from me, ripped from me, and taken from me was not what I had known was there when I was a child. What had been taken from me were the layers and layers and layers that organized religion that I used to be so firm about, and society, and people telling me I'm wackadoo because I can sense things, and all of that piling on me. The awakening process had stripped off all of those coats and stripped me bare, so that I was standing in nothing but the bare shift of the bare bones of what my family had believed in and done, and nothing more. And that was my truth. It's not about performance, it's relationship. You greet your threshold, you go home, it remembers you, you remember it, and you feel that connection. But you also have to heal, so it took me a little while. You don't have to call it anything fancy or anything, it's home. It's Aldala. It's whatever you want it to be. It's your birthright. It comes back to you. As long as you're honest about what it is, and don't lie to yourself, and don't try to dress it up, and also have no expectations, you can get it back. And I'm still getting it back, but I realize now I'm getting it back as someone who don't see things the same way, which that is the transformation, I am sure. One of the things while everything was going on, and I was told, was that you answer the call of the gods, which is literally what happened to me, and you will come back changed, or you won't come back at all. And what I find really interesting for me is that I came back changed, but only in a way that I was reset, as if for myself time was turned back, which I find really interesting. That I will go into that later. But turning back time has become such a big theme in what I was asked to do, and now where I stand, that it just might as well just put a whole bunch of clocks in the office. It's nice to have some clocks. Through it all, through the large part of my journey, I began pulling pitch for not just spirits, but some physical things. pulling up impurities and pulling pitch, clearing what's stuck. It's pulled sorrow, anger, grief, bleh, feeling blah. It gums up. It gums up things. It gums up people. It gums up places. It gums up spirits. It gums up trees. It gums up the ground. It's nasty. Working with this, one of the things I worked with the most, one of the things I saw the most, one of the things I dealt with the most, it's Loki's days. One of the things I'm supposed to go try to reach out to again the most was local spirits, the little ones, the little people. Whites, I believe, is one word that has been used. The ones that hang at the threshold or under trees. If they're respected and fed, and if you have a good relationship with them, because they are, after all, your neighbors. Everywhere you go, there's going to be spirits. I saw a couple in town, in the local city, because I had to go up there for something, and there were these couple of whites hanging out by the mall, kind of shyly looking around the corner, and I saw them, and when they're respected and you deal with them, something about that helps to bring things into balance. Because what I realized through this was that people are trying to bypass the whites and the spirits and go straight to the gods. But you have layers, and they are layers of an onion. Oh, there's onions. No. It's a ham sandwich. It's a ham sandwich we're in. We're the meat, and above us is different. And the spirits are the onions and the tomatoes and the lettuce, and the gods are the olive on top of the bread. And people keep trying to skip the sandwich to go straight to the olive. And what I realized through this journey and doing the spirit work that I was being asked to do, which I realize now might have been partially of a process to teach me my place in the universe and to remind me of where I stand, was that the little people, you're going to deal with them first because they're all around you. They're going to be first. And you may or may not see a god this month. Most likely not. Which is a lot closer back to my people's way. Stockbridge, Mohican, Brotherton, Woodland, Northeast. Whenever the boats came over and the colonization came, we had ways of living, and our medicine people would deal with spirits. They would have their personal spirits that nobody talked about, that oddly enough you would never talk about, and yet everybody in the village knew who they were. And you figure it out. And what I've come back to is, what my family still believed is actually what's recorded about New England tribal lifeways. Spirits first, gods are present, but they're not everything. Your spirits are who you deal with first. And in that old stance, the beings of place and household are dealt with as persons because they are. It doesn't matter that they don't have vessels that they're hanging out in. They're near because they're all around us, and they're not really that far, and there was relationships with them. And you would have reciprocity. You would have small, honest exchanges before big declarations. Some of the tribes would also have, don't look at them directly, be reverent to be respectful, but that's something that I would have to cover in a completely different video, the behaviors with that. Because as we all know, I'm spirit carrier of the irreverent, and there's a lot to being irreverent that people don't understand. So not as irreverent as you think. But medicine people with the Northeastern and my ancestors, they would keep the relationship with their spirit helpers, and they were dear friends and relatives. You would use drum and song to call them, an appeal made plainly, like you would to your kin. You wouldn't go through these, people think of this huge elaborate ritual off cases with a big star on the floor and everything, the way many magicians do, but that's not how things worked in my family. Dad would just walk up and yell at something. Reciprocity isn't a trick. It's how life flows on both sides. It's a give and take. It's gevo. Giving. and it's giving in a balanced light and dark way, uh, like a good marriage or a good friendship. You speak what you took. You do practice thankfulness, which I find really interesting because my older brother, when I was a kid, used to tell me, stop thanking them. But I still thank them. And you leave a little of what you have. What I find really interesting is people are like, oh, we've got to sacrifice this goat and pour out all the blood. And then the new trend is, I believe one book called it Snackifices. They'll sacrifice a Hershey bar. It's not the item that you're giving. It's the intent and the care. They can't eat that item, but they will partake of the emotion and energy you're putting out. We have a symbiotic relationship, us, the spirits, and the deities, the entities above. We have a symbiotic relationship. Just about everything humans touch is symbiotic, though. I mean, come on, let's face it. We imprint on Roombas. Thus, reciprocity back and forth works for us far better than what mainstream tries to tell us with the selfishness and the no sharing and the cutting ourselves off and the numbing ourselves down and keeping ourselves numb. You know, to go back to Spirits First also kind of shows up in the Norse Germanic history too. It wasn't just my people stands. Apparently, the same grammar in Norse and Germanic practice, if you look at what households actually did stands, households would make private offerings to local spirits. Apparently, according to my little research right here, there's an old skaldic travel poem where the poet is turned away at farm doors because the family is keeping an awfulblot. It's a private right to the elves, and outsiders weren't welcome. That's a Spirit's First home level right, and I am going to be memorizing me a poem. Apparently there was long custom to protect land spirits. Early Icelanders had the rule about removing dragonhead prowls when approaching shore so that you wouldn't frighten off the landbiter, the landwights, which makes sense to me. You don't want your landwights frightened off. I tend to try to have landwights on my land so that if I'm going somewhere, I can get warned. I cannot count the times I was warned that somebody negative had come to my home, and I get home and I get told, hey, the police were at your door or whatever. Even today, Iceland's national symbols carry the land white figures, which is kind of cool. So you want to look at their national symbols and see what you're, and check out what you're actually looking at. Then there's female ancestral and land spirits were honored locally. Apparently there was a disabloat, an offerings to the Disir, which I personally have never got to experience. And then, we have later Scandinavian folklore, keeping that alive with the niece as a house spirit you feed. House spirits were just a really big deal. Even today, there are still, I was reading an article the other week that Ashlad, who people feel might be connected to Loki. I actually kind of agree with that, but that's a debate. Ashlad is still very honored because Ashlad would live in your hearth and protect your home and bring gifts to your family, and you really just want to love your Ashlad because that fire, that divine fire, keeps you warm at night. And you it can go bad, your house can burn down, but overall, it keeps you warm at night. And it's the thing that you keep with your palm. Anyway. So now, currently, I am working on going back to the old way of reciprocity, of giving and taking, and reestablishing my connection. There were some local spirits when I went up to Garden of the Gods, not far from here, that I've been meaning to go back to. Many of the tribes along the side, along the eastern border, have spirit baskets where we would leave baskets out as gifts to the little people with shiny trinkets and food. I've always been meaning to do that one. It's just I never found a basket I liked. Aren't I silly? But I'll be going back to leaving gifts out, like we did growing up. I will no longer be forcing myself to ignore spirit just because some idiot standing next to me doesn't understand that I can see and hear it. Because another thing that I have always believed in is that You have to be willing to stand up for what you believe in, and if you can sense the spirits, then it's okay. Part of our problem is that we have forgotten that and have been teaching each other that if you can see and hear a spirit, you must be mentally deranged. And that also is imbalanced. That is not to say that there isn't mental illness out there. Trust me on this one. I have dealt with mental illness in the family. I have handled many things. But there's a difference between actually having something wrong where the wire that allows you to see the spirits is fried versus actually being able to harness it and you can actually do it. So I'm no longer going to, well, I never really did a very good job of hiding it anyway, but I'm definitely going to be trying less now. And it's a matter of healing, of coming back to it, of acknowledging that, yeah, maybe I don't believe in the big guy and probably had stopped believing in him a while ago anyway. And maybe some of the creatures that had approached me and told me that they were, say, Freyer, weren't really Freyer because they were liars, which that can happen. That goes to another video. Shh, to the other video. Shh, to the other video. Shh, to the other video. What I must do now is figure out my balance. And part of that balance is in reestablishing little rituals. I get up in the morning. I might handle some stuff first. But almost always, before a couple hours is out, I'm going to piddle myself down to this area where I keep a candle. I'm going to light my candle. I am going to take a good whiff of the smell, and I'm going to scent that smell as much as I can to the God spouse that tricked me into God spousing him. And he loves it. So that it's gotten to where I actually am looking for a variety of smells and stuff. Kind of like serving a husband breakfast, only something I'm giving him a breakfast of smells. But this has become a centering ritual. And I do this, and I say, good morning, fourth husband. And I feel my energy come alive. Through this ritual, I ground. I become grounded. I actually have a ground through it, which is a really good thing, the first thing to do in the morning, so that when I have spent that good whole 60 long seconds, sometimes getting a response, sometimes not, I am able to face the day, and I feel like the day is settled and strong, and I'm ready to go. And there's been days that I have not necessarily given my fourth husband his breakfast, but I still took that moment to ground and center and wake up to the day. There is just something about that is just a good way to start. I used to do yoga religiously. I know I don't like it, but I did. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll go back to doing yoga. Oh, boring. I'll find something. I really love and enjoy dancing. So now that I've healed enough that I have figured out where I stand, because I had even stopped dancing in the astral and just dancing, period. I just couldn't bring myself to do it. Today is Locust Day. I will consider going back to dancing today in a little while as I continue to find my balance and accepting that my view of the cosmos, a lot of it that had been thrown on me, has changed. And it's kind of, I don't know if it's ironic that I have a stronger foundation in what I do now and where I stand now that's spiritual, while having been stripped of some of that spiritualness that had been put on me. It was like, in order to become more spiritual, I had to have the spiritualness stripped away to get to the bare bones of, this is the truth. This is the truth. And so that I found the truth. So I wouldn't say that I am balanced. I mean, am I? Nah, not yet. This might become a lifelong effort to become balanced. If I had an ability to take up shamanism a lot more seriously and find a teacher that I could trust, which, trust me, it isn't anybody around here, then I would probably go into shamanism a lot more seriously. As the call did call me. I have been looking into Scyther because that one There's a lot about it that matches what little bit I remember from the ways of my own people. And although there is a medicine path and a medicine school and medicine ways for natives in America, the challenge of getting into it was too high, and I was told I was from the wrong tribe, and no one would speak to me, and I was put down for even asking how dare I. What a monster I was. And as late as the Victorian times, or the end of the Victorian times, if you were someone like me born up on tribal land, which by the way was around Martha's Vineyard, then you would quietly disappear, because the Christianity had become so strong in the tribe, and the bad propaganda that came with if you were spiritual, that came along with Christianity back in that time, made it really dangerous to be born like me. My family actually happens to be some of the ones that ran from it. So that I am aware that when it comes to the shaman path, I'm probably going to end up trying to piece together what little bit survived in my family, which isn't much, and borrow from other practices. But also, I'm comforted in knowing that in my upbringing, at least, and according to Spirit of New England tribes, your shamanic practice was very individual. You were walked along with, but in the end, you ended up discovering a lot and finding a lot and making and going your own way. So I'm comfortable looking into cider as a way to go further if I'm able to. But these things are so expensive. You got to be rich to become a shaman, I swear to God. But also there's the fact that I do have Norse ancestry also, so that I'm still not exactly pulling from an outside ancestry. And so that it turns, it's looking like what I'm going to end up doing is coming up with a blend of both of my sides. And maybe this is what the gods wanted. Maybe this is what I was born to do. Maybe it's not. Maybe I'm just going to end up dancing a lot and having fun. That would be great, because I had lost an entire pant size when this began, and then with the stress eating, it came right back again. So I've got to work to get it all back off again. Fun times. So why does this matter? I don't know. It's not about renouncing big names. I actually came through it. One thing I find really interesting, speaking of big names, is that before this began, I would have nothing to do with Odin. I had only had something to do with Mengloth for a dying friend, and I had researched her and approached that pantheon because someone was in need. But through my nightmare, I had no shamans willing to step up and step into the role as my father would have done. So Odin stepped up and stood by me. And so that one thing that definitely changed for me was I started off going, no, Odin, I don't want to do with him. And came out of it going, yeah, Odin, he's awesome. So it isn't that I'm renouncing big names, but I am definitely renouncing my worldview. And currently everything is about restoring an interface that many people have neglected, myself included, with the bypassing the spirits around us and trying to transact only with the big ones, and where law is replacing relationship, and the costumes and the glamour and what's fancy and flashy is replacing consent and reciprocity and the balance of your home and your relationship with your spiritual neighbors. It's causing the pitch pulls and the things that I pull. When we deal near first, when we remember that we have circles around us and we don't want to jump over the circles, we want to keep things around together and remember remember how to interact in our place, the whole system will finally steady, I think. Um, there's been a video going around, shamanism will save the world. Well, if everyone becomes a shaman, I suppose, but not everyone is meant to be a shaman. How about remembering how to interact with the world and with spirit will help save the world? And this means, to me, accepting both good and bad. Even though the bad spirits nearly chewed me up, they were doing energy harvesting, it was pretty terrible. I still, if one of them came to me and needed my help, would help them. I would just be very clear about my boundaries. And that's just where I've landed after being scraped hollow and chewed up and torn out and spit out and thrown on the sand. Die. Spirits first. God's present, but they aren't everything. Reciprocity, I hope, will become, I don't know if it's going to become a daily practice, but it's definitely going to become a practice for me. My trust needs to be rebuilt slowly, if at all. And as far as faith goes, any faith I have will always be built on trust. I don't believe in blind faith, and thank goodness for that, because that's part of what saved my hide. And basically remembering this foundation so that my real life can be firmer. No, I guess technically I'm an atheist, but I'm not an atheist. And I'm not going to pretend about it anymore. I definitely have returned to an older stance that I already knew, because it's what I grew up in, with the spirits first and relationship over spectacle. And if my trust returns, if my belief returns, if anything like that comes back, it would be because somebody earned it. And it's going to be not because somebody told me to believe something blindly because they handed me a book and told me it was a sacred text. And it's not going to be because of some performance of sitting in a church listening to the woman play the piano to pull your heartstrings psychologically to get you to come forward and accept Jesus. Yes, I realized that was happening when I was much younger. I guess I was smarter than I thought. And I noticed that ever since I have come to this, that the air around me is cleaner. It's more truthful. And if there's one thing I have always appreciated, it is the truth, which is why Tyr is on my altar, among others. Now I'm going to go treat with my trongles, and I thank you for hanging out and putting up with the bad camera.